Right, I think I did it. So,
You did?
welcome everybody to Freeology Friday. I'm Aaron Tomlinson, and he is.
I'm Derrick Day.
I'm just going to make sure I did this right since I'm driving. Hey, so what's the latest on your Facebook page? Anything at all?
Nothing new, man. I put in the appeal. I had to do the facial recognition thing and all of that, and so now it's just hurry up and wait. And I've,
Oh,
I've heard of people that it's taken like 3 months to get their accounts restored.
really?
Yeah, and like Henry Harris, he said his got suspended, and it took him a month to get it back.
That's
So,
crazy, man.
and I'm like, I don't know who this account is, this Instagram account. I
Mhm.
got nothing to do with that.
Yeah, that is just crazy. All right, it says I'm live, but I'm not seeing it.
Refresh your Facebook.
Yeah, I'm trying. All right, there we go.
Okay.
I'm just going to share it
Okay. Come on,
here.
man.
Place. All right, man. So how's your New Year been? Looks like we're good. Looks like we're rocking and rolling.
My
On
New Year was
Facebook.
fantastic, man. Christmas was excellent. New Year's was wonderful. um, just had a quiet New Year with just me and Maya, and we had a great time.
Awesome.
Yeah. How about you? What you do anything special?
Um, hold on. I'm streaming on somebody else's channel here.
Uh,
Somebody in our network. That's
yeah.
okay. I think I just no.
Are you streaming on your channel?
I am. It shows 3 YouTube channels, so I'm streaming on both our YouTube channels and my Facebook page.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Yeah, we're
If I'm
okay.
streaming on somebody else's YouTube channel, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
guys. You're just gonna have to live with it.
And you guys, please forgive me. My cat is like, I've been gone for 2 weeks, and my son was looking after him while I was gone, but he's being like a total attention whore right now.
So what are you drinking tonight?
Funny that you should mention that because it's dry January,
Yes, it is.
and so I'm not drinking. I'm on day 3 of no alcohol. And here's the funny thing. Today is not so bad. Yesterday, I really wanted a shot of bourbon, like in the worst imaginable way. But I said, nah, just keep working through it, and got through it. And so now, we're on day 3. So I didn't what I did while I was down in Texas. I got some stevia packets and some real lemon juice and some cayenne, right? So I
Yeah.
was making your lemonade concoction,
Yeah.
but I get up here and I meant to take some stevia packets with me until I got to the grocery store here because I just got back today, and I didn't. So I remember Ducey had some sugar-free drinks. It's like this
Oh,
uh, uh, Hawaiian punch, very berry, but it's sugar-free, right? So I added some lemon juice, some lime juice, and some cayenne pepper to that, and it doesn't taste all that great. I'll be honest. It's
it does
not like
sound great.
not like the lemonade thing because I did the lemonade recipe. Everything you do except the maple sugar, I substituted
Right.
stevia, and
Yeah.
it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. I
But
told you they're selling that in the grocery store now. They've got a Kavita has and that's what it says it is: lemon juice, cayenne pepper, and stevia.
yeah,
Exactly. And it was like $5 for a 20-ounce bottle or something.
yeah. If you take one of those the stevia packets, like the box of stevia costs like about $5, and it
Yeah.
and it comes with like 30 packets in it. So if you divide that the 5 by 30, and then whatever the cost of water is in your house and the cayenne, it's like next to nothing.
Yeah. For sure. All right, man. So we're both dry Januaries. So
So what's in your glass?
same thing, but with the maple syrup. I didn't have any stevia. I like the stevia idea. I just didn't have any,
Yeah.
and I'm not intermittent fasting or anything. If I do that, which I'm planning on at some point this month, then I'll get the stevia and make it that way.
Yeah, well, I'm doing the intermittent fasting and the keto, and what's amazing is that throughout the entire holiday, I managed to remain in ketosis the whole time.
Oh, that's great.
So I didn't break it at all, during the holiday, and as a result, I weighed in today 241, which I was going back and looking through my history, like going back several. Man, I haven't been this light in almost 4 years.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah. So I'm happy.
Yeah. So that's good segue into tonight's topic, because we're going to talk about,
Yes,
is it wrong to be selfish? And really going to talk about self-care. But one of the things that I found, especially with Christians or former Christians, ex-Christians, other people too, but especially with that group, we get tripped up with our self-care because we think, oh, I'm focusing too much on myself. Am I being selfish, et cetera, and so on. We've talked about self-care. In fact, I think we might have done that for our New Year's episode last year. And it's interesting because we're both on health journeys, but very different ones.
Yep.
You're doing the ketosis, and I'm just, I'm trying to gain muscle and slim down, which is like a fool's errand to try to do both at the same time.
I'm doing the same thing, believe it or not. I'm trying to put some muscle on too, but
yeah. So I thought we're taking different approaches. I thought that might be a good place to start. We're taking different approaches as far as our diet and health journeys, but kind of after the same thing. And so I thought it would just be good to talk about, maybe go into, as much as you're comfortable, go into some details on that stuff, but also I just kind of want to start maybe by challenging this idea about selfishness. Like, selfishness is one of those words I think that gets thrown around that has an emotional trigger to it, but doesn't necessarily track to real life. Or in other words, if somebody says you're being selfish or that's selfish, our first response is an emotional response for most people, because we don't want to be selfish, right? We don't necessarily, like, not with everything is your first response internally going to be an emotional response. Like if I were to talk about lemonade, we're talking about lemonade and you're talking about stevia and your packets. And while you're talking, I'm having a visual response. I'm imagining what the stevia packets look like, referencing my own experience with them. So I'm imagining green packets of stevia and I'm kind of seeing you mix it up as you're talking. That's how I'm processing it. Not really aware of any emotion that I'm feeling about it, right? Selfishness is almost the opposite. We have an emotional response to it right away. But then how does it really track? What would it really look like if somebody videotaped selfishness? And how would we know to identify it as selfishness? Because maybe what we think of as selfishness is really just self-care. And maybe we throw that term around a little too much because, again, it's one of those things that gets lost in the emotion. You see what I'm saying? Like, oh, we automatically form a judgment because we have the emotional response. So we form the judgment either against ourselves. Oh, yeah, that probably is selfish. Or in defense of ourselves. I'm not being selfish at all. But we're not even necessarily thinking in the same way how it translates to real life. Like we might be thinking in the same way, just talking about how you make this stevia lemonade. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when I think about what actually is selfish, and when I'm saying what actually is selfish, what if somebody were to videotape you, and of course, selfish is kind of a value judgment.
Yep.
But if somebody were to videotape you, what would your actions have to look like in order for, let's say, the majority of the people, even if it's just 51%, if they watch that video, they say, oh, yeah, that's selfish for sure.
Yeah.
Versus self-care. Because if you're taking care of yourself, I'm thinking about, this is a relational term. Selfish is a relational term, right? Like usually you're being selfish because you're putting yourself your needs, wants, desires, or whatever ahead of someone else's or at someone else's expense, right?
That's it right there.
But if you think about self-care, if I'm taking care of myself, then relationally, I'm not expecting someone else to do it for me.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of problems start in relationships because we either expect people to do stuff for us that we should be doing for ourselves, or we are doing for others stuff that maybe they should be doing for themselves. And either one becomes problematic, right? But if I'm taking care of myself and I don't need you or someone else in my life, or, you think about this in terms of intimate relationships and stuff, if I don't need my wife or my partner taking care of me, then doesn't that just mean our time together is a bonus? You know what I mean? Like, doesn't that kind of lower expectations? Like, if I'm sold out to self-care and I'm taking really good care of myself so that I'm in really good shape and I'm feeling really good and I'm happy, then I'm not depending on someone else to take care of me, provide for me, make me happy. So I can't blame someone else if
Right.
there's problems in my life, right? Because
Yeah.
it's not an expectation that gets put out there. And if I don't have those expectations put out there and I'm just happy and I realize I'm responsible for my own happiness, then being with somebody just is a joy, right?
Yeah.
And you can eliminate probably 90% of the conflict that comes up in relationships, because I would venture to say, this is just an arbitrary number. There's no science to this that I've looked up, but I would venture to guess 90% of relational conflicts come from mismanaged expectations. I expect something from someone, they expect something from me, they let me down or I let them down, and now there's hurt feelings. Now we got to work through something.
Yeah.
So that's how I'll set it up. What are your thoughts?
Well, you said the magic phrase, right? That when you there's absolutely nothing wrong with caring for yourself. Self-care is fine. And even being selfish is fine, because let's say I want a particular dish. I want crab legs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you go out and you buy some crab legs. Now, that is a selfish act because there's no net benefit for it other than it makes you feel good. It kind of it self gratification.
Yeah, no net benefit to other people, in other
No,
words.
exactly. It doesn't benefit anyone else in any other way, but it does benefit you, but it doesn't harm anyone else.
Right.
And I think that like the difference between okay, so I think that there's selfishness that's valid.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's selfishness that's okay, that is justified. Um, you go out and buy a pair of shoes that you want just because you want these shoes, right? Now, again, you're not doing it to the exclusion of anyone else, and you're not doing it to harm anyone else, but you're doing it for yourself, right? And that's not necessarily self-care. Like you're talking about our health journey. Our health journey is self-care.
Yep.
That's like I'm making modifications in my behavior, in my diet, in my activity, because these are things that I think will make me better in the long run. And that's self-care. And but selfish is like, well, you sit up. I mean, even something as esoteric as turning on the TV and say, "Well, I'm going to binge on Pinky Blinders," right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's selfish. You could be doing something to more altruistic, something more sharing or uh, inclusional, but it isn't. But is that wrong? No. And that's the one thing that we have to learn is that selfishness in and of itself is not wrong. Now, when you do things at the expense of others or to harm others um, or to prevent someone from having a selfish moment, I think that's selfish. And let me hang my hat there for just a second, because this is something what you were talking about relationships, and this is something I've seen in relationships all the time, where you're doing something that you want to do, and your significant other comes in and pulls you away from that, not because there's anything specific that they need to have done, just that they don't want you doing that thing, right? And so that is when someone is interrupting their selfishness is trying to override yours. And I think that that's not right. I think that we would all be better off if someone would say, okay, hey, what are you doing there? Well, I'm watching the game. Well, can we do thus and such? And then you say, well, we could do that after the game, right? And then it's like it's kind of like a win-win, because you're saying we're going to do the thing, but let me finish my thing. And I think that's a compromise. It's an adequate compromise. But let's get back to self-care for a second, because again, there are things that you have to do for yourself. There are things that you should do for yourself. You can't wait for someone to do things for you all the time. But here's the other thing too, is that I've learned that there are certain things like okay, using Maya and I as an example, there are some things that she likes to do for me, right? So I have to let her do what she likes to do for me, and she likewise will let me do the things that I like to do for her, because then we kind of I don't know, we share in other care, right? Because other care is important too. There are things that people may not expect you to do, but you do them because that's something that's in your heart or in your mind to do. And I think that you need that also. I think that that's part of the human experience, that you have to be able to give other care, you have to be able to receive other care. But at the same time, nobody's going to lift them weights for you. Nobody's going to take your medicine for you. Nobody's going to
correct
alter your diet for you. These are things that you have to do yourself. So that's where I kind of land with the whole self-care, selfishness thing. But I think that selfishness is a word that is totally abused in most cases.
Yeah. I think you bring up a couple of really good points. I've never had anybody come for marriage counseling because my partner's just taking too good a care of me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, obviously if it's something that's flowing from love rather than from necessity, that's a different thing. And obviously there can be situations, if you're sick, if you're unable to do something for yourself for, a legitimate reason, that's totally different. But I think a lot of conflict could go away in relationships if we'd focus more on ourselves than we focus on the other person. And that just seems contrary because especially because the way we were taught as Christians, right?
Yep.
That can just seem totally contrary. But I've been thinking about self-care because I do New Year's resolutions. And ironically, mine usually kick in. Here's my thing. And I said this last year, mine usually kick in about March. Which means I decide I'm going to do something in January. I'm really serious about it. And I usually get around to it in a few months or whatever. Well, I'm a little bit ahead and a little bit behind. Here's what I mean. Because last year, my focus for the new year, my New Year's resolution was I'm going to focus on longevity and guess what? Self-care. And it didn't kick in until August. And the only reason it kicked in, actually September, at one day in August, the only reason it kicked in was because I landed myself in the hospital. Yeah. So on an intuitive level, even though 90% of people, 80% of people, whatever it is, their New Year's resolution is usually they want to lose weight, they want to get healthy, they want to get back in shape. That's a vast majority of people. And then I was going to look it up today, but I got sidetracked. I wanted to see there's a day that they call Quit Day. That's like, I can't remember if it's like the second Saturday after New Year's or something, or maybe it's sometime in February, but it's when most people quit their New Year's resolutions. So I landed myself in the hospital. So then I had to really get serious about my self-care. I had no choice but to get serious about my self-care. So I did. And so going into 2025, I'm still on that journey. I'm not where I want to be. So that's where my focus is for this year. So you could say I'm really behind. I'm behind a year, or you could say I got a head start in August. But either way, I've been focused on that. But I also been thinking about this thing. Why do people make resolutions and then they quit? You know, I want to say it's like 2 weeks later or something that people quit and give up. And I got to thinking, you know, this self-care thing, because I'm really taking it to the extreme. And I thought to myself, this is damn time consuming, man. And this just taking care of this human being is a lot of time and effort. And here's what I mean. I'll just go into all the various different stuff, right, that I'm doing at the risk of being too bougie for people or whatever. But there's health, right? So I want to lose weight and gain muscle. That there is an exact science to that.
Yep.
Now, I can tell myself, and this is perfectly fine. I'm not criticizing this. I think this is a great thing for people to do. It's just not going to get me where I want to go. If I were to say to myself, I'm just going to eat healthy, I'm going to eat whole foods. Because here's what happened to me, Derrick. I got out of the hospital and I said, okay, I'm only going to eat healthy, meaning I'm only going to eat whole foods and things that I know that are good for me. Dark chocolate happens to be good for me. So I'm going to add a little bit of dark chocolate, a few pieces of dark chocolate. And we all know fruits and vegetables are good, right? Well, if you have any kind of sweet tooth, let's be honest, you know, orange juice or an orange is a lot more appealing than broccoli. You know, just dry broccoli with no dip. Right? I mean, is there anything in the world worse than just raw broccoli? I don't know if there is. I'm sure there is, but I don't know.
I actually like raw broccoli, but I'm a weirdo, so keep going.
That stuff is just awful to me. But I make myself eat it. So of course you would. Of course you'd like raw broccoli. So I'm eating I'm eating fruits and vegetables. I'm eating lean meats. I went for about 2.5 months. I didn't have any red meat at all. It was fish and chicken and a little bit of pork here and there. That was it, right?
Yeah.
And I noticed after a couple months, 2.5 months, I'm gaining weight. So I'm like, well, damn, I gotta look at my calories here.
Yeah.
And just for the people out there, if you have never tracked your calories, like honestly, as best as you can, even if you're just reading the nutrition information on the back of the box and you're estimating how your portion size is, damn, those things add up. And then to burn those calories, like, oh, I'll just burn the, yeah, right. I mean, like I exercised for an hour today at a good pace. Right? Like at a pace that would have killed me a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And I probably burned 300 calories in an hour, maybe 350, right?
Yep.
And then I'm adding up my wife's making hamburgers and she's like, you want a 1/4 pound hamburger, like it's measured out for you, right? It comes in the pre-made patty.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, let me look that up because I'm keeping track of my calories, right?
Yep.
Like there's 300 damn calories in that thing. I'm already at 1,000. Like I need to be at about 1,900. So like I said, I'm kind of going to the nth degree with this, but like I want to track my calories. I want to track my protein intake. I want to track all my macros, my protein, my carbs, my fats.
Yep.
Then I'm trying to, so what I found out was fruit, like, because I'm gaining weight. I'm like, why am I gaining weight? You know, I've cut out all the junk. Well, let me tell you, 3 of those little pieces of dark chocolate is like 250 calories just for 3 little pieces.
Yeah.
That's like 45 minutes of my workout, man.
Yep.
But And I was looking at, what do they estimate for the average person, over 50, guy over 50, how much exercise is the daily recommended amount of exercise? 30 minutes a day, right? 30 minutes of cardio, some kind of cardio exercise a day. So I do think that we fail at some of this because we have to carve out space in our life. But what does that say about us as a society? What does that say about me? Just put it back on myself. Then I'm doing this stuff, just the diet and the exercise part. This doesn't even count skincare, hair care, tooth care, financial well-being, social well-being. Like mental health, right? So I'm trying to make sure that I'm exercising, that I'm lifting weights and getting cardio, not just getting steady state cardio, but also getting some high intensity interval training in there as well. So that I work on my VO2 max, not just my steady state cardio, right? Make sure I'm getting all my macros, make sure I'm getting vitamins, take my supplements on top of that, make sure I'm doing the right skin routine in the morning and at night, flossing my teeth every day. It's a lot. Meditating. That's the other thing. I want to make sure I have. So just if I get my 30 minutes of exercise and I want to get an hour of meditation, that's maybe a little bit extreme for people. But let's say you just want to get 20 minutes of meditation in, 30 minutes of exercise. That's an hour out of your day.
Yeah.
And then if I prioritize my sleep, then I'm also cutting some time out of my day and routine out of my day because I have horrible sleep hygiene. And so I've just focused like, okay, I'm going to get my sleep right. I'm going to get my eating right. I'm going to get my exercising right. What's all this going to do for me? It's going to, I feel better, right? It's going to add years to my life. If I do get a disease, another one, I've got a better chance at a positive outcome if I'm in better shape based on all the statistics that are out there, right? So that means I can show up better for the people in my life. So I know I'm taking a lot of time here, but
you're great, man.
I thought it would be cool because this is just how I've been thinking about it. We talk about self-care, but what does that really mean? What does it mean to take care of ourselves? And I don't think that we are taught as a society how to really care for ourselves on all the various different levels and dimensions of self-care. Because then we haven't even talked about the mental health. I mean, that aspect of it. And what do we need to do to manage our anxiety, manage our stress? What happens if we go through a bout of depression? What do we do about that stuff? And so it's a really huge, I mean, you could probably start a whole YouTube channel. A person could start, and I'm sure there's millions of them out there, but a person could do a whole YouTube channel and their only focus could be on self-care, and they would have 5 years of content by the time they really thought through what it takes for a person to really genuinely take care of themselves.
Yeah. And this what I think of. I think of this as like maintenance. You buy a car and you can't just drive the car, never change the oil, never rotate the tires, never get the brakes adjusted, never clean it, all of that stuff. And if you do that, that car, it'll be brand new, year one by the end or day one. By the end of year one, your car will be a piece of shit, right? Because you didn't know you did no maintenance, and problems creep up fast. And one of the things that I see, and I'm guilty of this too, is that you go through this phase where you're not maintaining yourself, you're not doing the preventive maintenance, right? And so what happens is you get sick, and then it's like, okay, now you can't maintenance yourself out of that hole. Now it's repair time, and repair is costly. Repair takes out more time. It's easier to set aside the time for the maintenance than it is for the repair.
So true.
So that's the way I look at it. And you were talking about your routine. So like with me, I've been on I've been on keto since December the 8th. But I was on a downward trend weight wise after Thanksgiving, just because I said, okay, I ate like a pig on Thanksgiving. I just need to cut back. So I was like, 2 meals a day, watching what I eat, and so I was on a downward trend. But then when I started the keto, then the weight just started, it just started falling off, right?
Keep talking. I gotta let my dog out real quick. Hold on. Just keep talking.
So since Thanksgiving, I'm down about 22 pounds. And I feel good because of it. Well, first of all, I feel physically good. A lot of joint pain that I had is gone. Some of that is due to the not having the excess weight around. But another part of it is that I've learned the ketone bodies in your bloodstream have an anti-inflammatory benefit. So my goal is very similar to yours. Is I want to lose weight, but I want to gain muscle. But I want to gain muscle in targeted places, because there are some places, some parts of my body, like my arms and my chest, tend to respond really quickly to any exercise, and they'll pop right in shape. My abs and obliques, my core in general. I want to work on that, and then I want to increase the muscle mass in my legs. Right. So those are some of the things that I want to do. But like to your point, in order to do this, my path forward is, first of all, keto, which means you were talking about watching macros. Well, my macro to watch is carbs, right?
Right.
So my goal in this is not to exceed more than 30 grams of carbs a day until I reach my target weight. Now, at the rate that I'm going, I should probably hit my target weight about May, I'm guessing. And so once I get there, once I hit the target weight, then it's like I can ramp that up to from 30 to 40, and then 40 to 50, and then 50 becomes my maintenance level. And I'll never eat more than 50 grams of carbs a day. So let me tell you, Sunday, was it Sunday? Yeah, Sunday. No, it wasn't Sunday. No, this was New Year's Day, Wednesday. I'm so thrown off because Wednesday felt like a Sunday to me.
I know.
And I'm still trying to process that. But she made pot roast, and this pot roast was fantastic. Oh my God, one of the best pot roasts ever. But there's vegetables in it. It's like there's green beans in it, there's carrots, there's potatoes. And so potatoes are the enemy to keto. But I ate a couple of potatoes, and Maya made some cornbread, and so I had a little pinch of cornbread because I'm not going to eat a lot of it, and I'm just like I'm just being really conscious of this. And so she had this ice cream. She called it Dubai ice cream, and I had a bite of it. It was decadent. It was wonderful. But at the same time, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to take myself out of ketosis, right? So okay, this might border on the TMI, but I got the little pee strips, right? So you pee on the strip, and if it turns purple, you're in ketosis. You're good. If it stays pink or flesh color, then you're out of ketosis. And guess what? You got to start all over. So my self-care is to make sure that I stay in ketosis, because as Dr. Eric Berg said, you become what's called fat adaptive. So in other words, your body prefers its own fat as fuel over whatever you eat. And if you do that, your body will start paring off the fat. And it's been amazing. Like, I trimmed my beard down because it's like the whole double chin thing, it's gone. I mean, I still have a ways to go to really get my whole, the whole thing, my pants, I have pants that fit better. Maya and I went out for New Year's Eve. I wore a blazer that the last time I wore it was in the summer. And when I wore it, I had to wear it open because my belly was just too big to close it. Now I button that bad boy up and I look sharp, So, but again, there's a time component to this because you got to stop and figure out, okay, what am I going to eat? When am I going to eat? Uh, I have to watch the macros, and then I have to make sure that I get some exercise in because I want my body to continue to work in conjunction with the ketosis to pair off this fat and also add muscle. So that's the routine that I've been dealing with. But if you don't, like, if I had kept going the way I was going, just eating the way I wanted to eat, um, I could have easily hit 300 pounds easily, and that would have been, you know, I've recovered from heart disease. Uh, I've recovered from prostate cancer, all these different things, and and I'm like, I could wind up being in the same position as before because I'm not doing the maintenance. So what I'm going back realizing now is like, okay, I only have this one body. I have it for the number of years that I'm going to have it. If I want to get the maximum use out of it, I need to make sure that I'm taking care of it. And so if I do these things, my body should reward me with more years, right? And so the game plan is that, like, for Maya and I, is that I have to live to see her 100th birthday, and because I'm significantly older than her, that means I've got to make it to like 117, to get there. But I'm determined I'm going to get there because that's the metric that she and I have set. So I want to make sure that I'm doing the maintenance, make sure I'm drinking plenty of water, make sure that I'm eating the right foods, make sure that I'm first of all watching my carbs, but then also because of certain other things that have gone on in my body, like I need to make sure that my B vitamins are good, my D vitamins are good, all of these things, so that my body will be efficient. It's like you can, I'm going to say this and I'll shut up because I've talked for a long time now, but like you could buy an old car, you buy like a 56 Chevy, right? And it might be in okay shape, but there's so many things in it that if you don't pay attention to them, they'll go bad quickly. And so once you get it, even though it's older, even though it's got some miles on it, even though it's been worn, there's some wear and tear, you can get in there and say, okay, these are the parts that I need to address. These are the maintenance issues I need to address. And if I do that, this car should last many, many more years. Fun fact, in Cuba, right? Because no cars have been able to be imported there since the communist revolution in the 60s. There are thousands of pristine late 50s, early 60s American cars in Cuba. Now, because they can't get new cars, they can't get the parts, these guys have just figured out how to make these cars last and run. Well, if we take that same mindset to our bodies, that even though there's some miles on us, even though we've been worn a little bit, even though we're a little frayed around the edges, it's not too late. So self-care is important. You first, you have to take inventory of what you have, what's good, what's not so good, and say, okay, these things that are not so good, these are the things that I need to do to improve the condition of these parts so that I can keep this thing on the road longer.
Yeah. I mean, on the one hand, and again, I wanted to get this across to people, so I'm glad you went more into detail about like the keto diet. Yeah. On the one hand, it's like, oh, there is a simplicity to keto for weight loss for sure. Yeah. Because you just stay away from the carbs, right? So like if there's the pot roast and all that good stuff, you just know definitely don't eat the potato or just a little bit, or I love that, a pinch of cornbread.
Yeah, I mean, I'm laughing. A pinch of cornbread.
we did black-eyed peas and cornbread for New Year's, and I'm like, counting my calories because I just never have before. And I'm like, damn, there's a lot of freaking calories in cornbread. Like, what the hell? When, so there, but then also you've got to test yourself. So you mentioned the pea strips and stuff like that. So there's a lot of effort that goes into this. When I say simplicity, I mean, my food choices are kind of, if I know what contains high carbs, or, what if some things contain carbs that people would never think contain a lot of carbs. But if I have an idea, these are the foods I can eat, these are the foods I need to stay away from. And I kind of did that. I didn't do the keto thing, but I kind of adopted sort of a Mediterranean thing. I was eating a lot of nuts.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of fat and carbs and everything that can make you fat in nuts. Not to mention it was increasing my potassium too high, which is something I got to watch because of my heart issues and stuff like that. So it's just like, oh my God. But I think one of the things I love also, and I think is important, I think it'd be good to talk about this, is I think as human beings, I'm pretty disciplined when I want to be. And part of the reason I don't do more stuff is because I know it's just very hard for me to do something half baked. Yeah. It just is. So if I'm going to do something and really do it, then I know it's going to require a lot of effort and whatever from me, because I want to make sure that I'm doing it well. Yeah. Even if that comes to self-care, right? But so what I'm saying is I'm probably have trained myself to be a little more disciplined than the average Joe. Yeah. But it's still important for me that I'm able to take note of progress, because there's nothing worse, right? Like, imagine if you were denying yourself all these great things like the cornbread and the potatoes and whatever else it is that you're avoiding. I mean, the sweets are out. Anything with sugar is out. Even maple syrup is out, right? And I'm talking about the pure stuff, because I get the pure stuff. I don't get,
Yeah, I don't mess with like Aunt Jemima and all that. I get pure maple syrup.
Exactly. So you think, oh, well, it's pure. God made it, so it's okay. Well, not necessarily. But it's important to be able to measure some kind of progress. So that's another part of this. Yeah. So like you talked about cutting your beard shorter because you don't have the double chin anymore. Or you've shared, I think, both last week and this week, that you've lost significant number of pounds on the scale. And so if somebody's going to do a health journey, it's really important, number one, I think, to know what you're after for yourself, to know what your specific needs are. And there's ways to find that out. I mean, it depends on how extreme you want to go with this stuff. I'm fortunate because of my health crisis that I get my blood work done every month right now. Yeah. So that's one of the ways that I have a feedback loop. It's one of the reasons I knew my potassium was too high, right? Because I was getting my blood work done every month. I'll go back next month and have it done again. But, most insurances will pay for at least blood work once a year. So you might go get your blood work done and just have a physical and, find out where you're at. And then you can think about what you need to focus on. I think most people know I need to do this or that, right? I mean, I knew it wasn't a big mystery to me. I just needed a big 2x4 to hit me across the head to get me to do it. But I think coming up with, whether it's your physical health, your mental health, your social health, your spiritual well-being, being able to have some kind of a goal, but then also being able to have some kind of feedback mechanism so that you can see if you're progressing. So like, for example, when I got out, I don't want to get too personal, but when I got out of the hospital, I'd lost a lot of weight. Yeah. And I thought, oh, this is great. I weighed the least I'd weighed in 5-6 years. And I thought, well, if I just change my diet, I'll be able to keep it off. And then I start gaining like all these pounds. Yeah. And I'm like, where is all this coming from? And it's like, I don't know, it might be that fruit smoothie that you had in the morning that has 800 calories.
Yeah, that part.
Yeah, but it's healthy, or it might be the nuts and the dark chocolate that you're binging. I remember one night when I started counting my calories, I did some intermittent fasting. So, because I'm alternating a little bit, mixing in a little bit of intermittent fasting in there with it. And I didn't eat till 8 o'clock that night. I waited till 8 o'clock. So it was 24 hours. I did 24-hour, a little bit past 24-hour fast. And I'm going to tell you, in an hour and a half, I consumed about 2,000 calories.
Wow.
Because I just went to town. So my point is, if you're denying yourself all these things, and imagine if you didn't have the cornbread, you didn't have the potatoes, you didn't have sugar. So I'm assuming no pumpkin pie. I'm assuming the pumpkin pie wasn't made with stevia or
Nope.
Right. Or whatever, sweet potato pie, whatever people have at the holidays. And imagine if you did that for, when did you say you started?
December the 8th.
Yeah. So imagine if you did that, even, till through the holidays, till January, what is today? January 3rd. And you lost a half pound or something. You still had your double chin.
Then I'd be like, what the fuck?
What am I doing this for? Right. So maybe, I don't know if you want to throw your 2 cents in on just the idea of some kind of feedback mechanism where you can measure your progress. In my case, I'm going the wrong direction, so I have to make adjustments. In your case, you're going the right direction, so it increases your motivation, I would think, to want to continue what you're doing.
Yep. And you said something very key here, and you have to have a feedback mechanism. So your feedback loop can consist of both internal and external sources, right? Internal sources is, I look at myself and I see results. I put on a pair of pants that I couldn't put on before, and they fit. Okay, great. So that's internal. Other internal things are you're trending. Okay, like let's say that you're dieting, exercising, but you're not losing weight. But you say, okay, I feel better. I'm sleeping better.
Yep.
I get up, I feel better. I have more energy throughout the day. I have less pain. Things, my body is working better. It's more efficient. That is that. And the other thing too is that what I want to tell people is that if you're on the journey to good health, don't just rely on the scale, because I had a moment. Matter of fact, and this is an interesting thing, going back and forth between Tulsa and Texas presents a study in contrast for me, because Maya can cook. She can cook really, really well, and so when I go down there and I'm with her, she has a big family, so she cooks like, for an army, and so she's like, well, if you're hungry, you got to eat, and she's like, okay, I'll have a portion. She said, did you have enough? Do you need more? Right? And so I'll have seconds, and then sometimes, it's really good, I want to have thirds, and so I invariably, going down there always meant gaining a pound or two. No matter what I was doing here, I go back, I lose 2 pounds here, and I go back to Texas and I gain a couple of pounds. And so I have like net zero. But you have to have this internal feedback loop. How do I look? How do I feel? Do I feel more comfortable walking from the parking lot to the grocery store?
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. And then external feedback. When I went down to Texas this time, and Maya was saying to her daughter, she said, yeah, Derrick's been doing keto. And she said, yeah, because I was looking at him and saying, he's getting skinny, and that was external feedback. And then, Maya, she looked at me, she was like, oh, dang, baby, you look good. And so that's another thing. Then my friends down here in Tulsa, I was out with my buddy Charlie before I left, and Charlie's, man, dude, you're looking good. Looks like whatever it is that you're doing, keep doing it because it's working. So you have this external feedback, and then some other external feedback, like let's say you go to the doctor and you
Mhm.
get your blood work done and you find out your A1C is better, your cholesterol is better. I haven't gone to the doctor yet, but I have a visit coming up this month, and so for that visit, I'll have blood work drawn, and I'm really excited to see what's in that, because I know that like my bad cholesterol was a little elevated, just a little. It was just at the high range of normal, but that's the highest that it's been.
Mhm.
But everything else, like my good cholesterol is very good. My triglycerides very low. My A1C probably needed a little bit of work because it was like right around 6, a little over 6, like 6.1. It needs to be under 6, and all of that will be in in range the next time I go, because I know how this works. So you have to have the internal things. How do you feel? How do you look? Do you have more energy? Do you have more wind? Um, you know, things like are you going to the bathroom more regularly? All these things. These are indicators that your self care is working. Um, like for example, if you, like, again, using the old car analogy, you buy an old car and you start it up, and you see black smoke coming out of the exhaust, right? So that means you're I think black smoke means you're burning oil. So you do you do a flush of the crankcase, and you add some additive, and you change the oil and all of that, start the car up, and if that black smoke is gone, then that means that you had an issue with the age of your oil. But if you still have a black smoke, then that means you might have a bad oil ring or two in your on your pistons, which is a more expensive repair. But once you take care of it, the problem goes away, and the engine runs longer. So you have to like look for signs too. If you have like rapid weight gain or rapid weight loss, even if it's not something that you're trying to do, then you need to seek medical attention. You need some external care,
Yeah, true.
because self care in those cases doesn't work. When you have a medical situation, self care is not the way. YouTube cannot be your doctor, right? Google can't be your doctor.
Yeah.
Seek medical attention. Um, but when you see things that are working, you say, okay, I'm doing this. This is what the expected result is, and the actual result is tracking with the expected result. That means you're doing something right. Keep doing it, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Uh, but that's and here's the other thing too, is that some people will say that trying to look good. So there's this phenomenon with young men now where young men are getting into these skincare routines, and there are all kinds of YouTube videos, and they have a name for it, and I didn't look at it. I don't remember it, and I didn't remember to look it up before this show, and I'll get it and I'll share it with you, and we can share it back with others. But there's like a chewing gum that's supposed to help you with your jawline,
Yeah.
things like that, and people are doing all these things, and they'll say, oh well, that's just so narcissistic and that's selfish. No, if that's an aesthetic that appeals to you, and it makes you feel better when you look at yourself in the mirror, then yes, it's selfish, but it's not selfish in an exclusionary or harmful way. And that's the big thing to remember, is that just because something is selfish, we dress a certain way, we work out a certain way, we diet a certain way, we do skincare a certain way, or hair care a certain way, or we meditate or pray a certain way, or a certain amount of time. All of these things are all selfish because they are gratifying to self. But we do them not because we're doing it to exclude anyone else or to harm anyone else. It's just it's extreme self-care. Or let me say, not extreme. Let me change that word. Focused self-care. It's
Yeah.
focused self-care.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. If your self-care is focused, and it does not impact influence or anyone else in any negative way, and keep on doing it. That's
Yeah, I think just to go back to something you were sharing earlier. Oh, wait, before I do that, I don't know. I wish I'm terrible at this stuff and I'm driving. I'm in charge of the restream feed.
okay.
So I don't know how to share. I don't know how to share something from like my computer screen, but I don't know if anybody could see this, but that's the difference, visual difference between 5 pounds of fat and 5 pounds of muscle.
Wow.
So when you're talking about not using the scale,
Yep.
if you are building muscle, I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
That's how much heavier muscle is than fat. So
Yeah.
um, you can definitely be going and moving the right direction and the scale not show it. So you got to make sure you have the appropriate feedback mechanism. And the other thing I want to say is like, it doesn't take much. Like the body is amazing how quickly it can respond to stuff, even at our age, right?
Yep.
Like you're never too old to start, and
Yep.
it can respond. Literally, if somebody just does, I don't know, we used to call them, I think, calisthenics. What's the term for it? Where you're just using your body weight, like doing push-ups and
Yeah. Body weight exercises or calisthenics. Yeah.
yeah, you just at home, doing push-ups. If you can't do push-ups, like they're trying to get your form right, then you can do them on your knees. You can do them on the wall. There's lots of ways that you can do it to build strength. And it really only takes, for muscle building, especially if you're just starting, 20 minutes a couple times a week, focusing on just muscle building type exercises, like I said, doing some push-ups, maybe doing some sit-ups, maybe doing some, squats,
Yep.
maybe buy yourself some dumbbells so you can throw in some shoulder work and arm work and whatever else you want to do. But it doesn't take a lot. You don't have to spend hours in the gym to build muscle and to start to see a difference. So I think keeping it realistic, making sure that you have some kind of feedback mechanism in place and the right kind of feedback mechanism, which isn't always real. So measuring sometimes is a better way to do that. So I think those are things that are really important. And then, but I want to come back to something that you said a minute ago. Except I gotta close my door again. Sorry, give me 1 second. I'll be right back. Sorry.
I'm gonna throw something in real quick while you're thinking about that, because I want to talk to everyone about from a position of body positivity, because a lot of times we get caught up in aesthetics that's driven externally, that we want to look good because this is what society expects us to look like. And what I want to say to everybody is, like, don't get hung up on that. Really, what you want to make sure is that your body is functional, that you can get up, sit down, that you can sit down on the floor, get yourself up from the floor, that you can get up from a prone or lying position, that you don't have that you're not challenged by walking short distances, like from your car to the grocery store or things like that, or that you can climb up a flight of stairs without a whole lot of difficulty. And as long as you can do those things, as long as you have those that functional strength, if so what if you're a little overweight or you're a little underweight? The thing is that two things. Number one, make sure that you're functional, that you can do these, normal things. And the second thing, that what you see you like, that what you see you love. Because if you love yourself, you don't really have to give a shit what anybody else thinks about how you look, right? So I just wanted to put that out there, because self-care and selfishness, what I'm saying is that don't beat yourself up trying to do self-care, because another thing too, to use the old car analogy, is that there are some people that get really obsessive with things like that, or like an old house. I knew a guy that had an old house, and he was constantly changing things. He was tearing down a wall, or he's changing the counters in the kitchen, constantly changing. and at a certain point, you reach a point of negative returns because you do these things to an obsessive level. And what I'm saying is that when you do that, your selfishness might be exclusionary, especially like if other people are living in the house or other people are using the old car. If nobody can enjoy the car because you're constantly having it on lifts and you're constantly tinkering with stuff and constantly changing things that really don't, contribute to the enjoyment of the thing, because at the end of the day, you have to be satisfied with who you are and happy in your own skin. So that's my little soapbox for that.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good one. And again, of course, I don't know how YouTube looks at this stuff, but we're assuming that that we're not doctors or licensed nutrition, whatever, or so you want to check with professionals because
Be your doctor.
very nuanced. This is very nuanced. So everybody is different, right? So this is not what do they say? Not a substitution for professional care.
Right. So there's a mutual friend of ours who had his own health challenges recently, and so I was when he got out of the hospital, I said, hey man, like I'm doing keto. This is what I'm doing. If you want to join me on this, join me on the journey, you can, and then we could be accountability partners. But I told him, I said, but before you do this, check with your doctor and see if it's okay, because I don't want to tell you to just, hey, tag along with me because excuse me, and what I'm doing may be harmful for you. So check with your doctor, make sure. So we want to make sure that we give that disclaimer.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I want to switch gears a little bit and come back to something you said, because I really think if we think this thing through on selfishness, we're going to find out that there's a whole lot of worry around, am I being selfish or is this selfish? There's a whole lot of ideas that just really don't have any substance to them whatsoever. So you talked at the beginning about negotiation, compromises. You're watching the game. Hey, do you want to play table game with the family, or we can go out and do this, or you want the crab legs, right? Maybe the typical scenario, you want crab legs and Maya wants, I don't know, Mexican food, or Italian food or something like that.
Those are good comparisons, by the way.
And so who's gonna, who wins in these situations? And I think that, because one of the things that can happen and does happen in relationships is if eventually relationships can become lopsided in a way where one partner is constantly the person who is, I don't want to say placating because that's too strong of a word, but I can't think of the right word. They're constantly the one that's giving up their need or want or desire for the sake of going along. Yeah, acquiescing. That's the word I'm looking for. And that resentment will build up. And I'll tell you what, there is no worse kind of bitterness. Like we typically think of, forgiveness or bitterness being like it's got to be the major issues. But I'm going to tell you something. Those little micro issues, when you're in relationship with somebody, build up over time. Yep. And resentment can come from just simply as, how come we never get to watch on TV what I want to watch? Or how come, we always go to the restaurant that you like? Or how come we put the toilet paper going facing down instead of up, or why don't you squeeze, for the love of God, why do you squeeze the toothpaste tube in the middle instead of, doing it the right way? Everybody knows the right way is to come from the bottom, right? And move up. And those are real things, after a while. So, but if you are unwilling to sacrifice, there's a difference between sacrifice and compromise.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
You cannot compromise if you're sacrificing.
That's right.
Because there's no compromise. You're just giving it up. So, classic example. I mean, in this day and age, hell, if I really want seafood and Julie really wants Italian food, we just DoorDash from different places and eat at home.
Yeah.
We can both get what we want. Or I suppose if you've just got one TV, then, but everything's streamed now. So it's not like the old days where, oh my God, I'm going to miss this episode of Adam 12 or whatever that show was called. I missed this episode. I don't know what, or Emergency. I'm more familiar with. I don't know what's going to happen to Ron and Roy and Johnny on this episode of Emergency. So, and for Christ's sake, I won't be able to see it until next summer anyway. And then I got to catch it at the right time. So then I could understand the argument back then, Of course, with my luck, I'd win. We'd watch Emergency, and they'd get technical difficulties, and you miss it anyway. Remember that?
You get the little test
screen, or interrupt. We're interrupting this program because I don't know. The president, had to go to the hospital for a checkup or something.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like there aren't that many things with all of the modern conveniences and stuff. There just aren't that many things that you can't both get what you want. And so you mentioned something, Derrick, that I wanted to touch on. Making yourself enough of a priority that you negotiate win-win scenarios and win-win situations is much healthier for a relationship in terms of its longevity than this sort of zero-sum game where, well, we want to play, I don't know, Uno right now. And you're just being selfish because you just want to watch the Broncos and nobody else in the family likes the Broncos. And so, and so we're all going to play a game without, we'll just, you can work around that stuff. Let me finish the game, or let me, record the game, and then we can play it and I can come back and watch it later. Just nobody give me the score, nobody tell me what the situation. I mean, there's just so many ways, but you cannot do that if you do not make yourself a priority and say, I'm not going to sacrifice what I want. It is possible. And in fact, I think necessary to healthy, long relationships that you have a certain amount of selfishness that you don't compromise on, but that you work together with your partner or the people in your life to accomplish those things.
Yep. Absolutely.
Even on the job. Now, if I work in the public sector, so the private sector may be totally different than this, but you can speak to that better than I can. But you've got to be able to set your boundaries with your job. And it's easier if you're starting a new job because we teach people how to treat us. So you can set your parameters and knowing what you can do and what you can't do, knowing what you will do and what you won't do, and just letting your supervisors or your bosses know that up front. If you've constantly, sacrificed all of that stuff for your employment, then you have to reteach people. And that's the problem. When you have to reteach people how to treat you, that's really a difficult thing. But if we would all just approach it selfishly, we would never have to retrain anybody.
Yep.
And life would be so much easier.
But you made a really key point there, because part of self-care is setting boundaries.
Yeah.
Because if you're not setting boundaries, you're not practicing effective self-care. Because what you're doing is you're allowing people to intrude into your space, your sphere, without consequence, right? So setting boundaries is essential for self-care. Like if you have time where, this is your meditation time, you have to explain to the people around you, hey, this is my meditation time, and it's sacrosanct. This is something that I need to do for me, and everyone around you should understand that. That unless the house is burning down, or the kids are beating each other up or something like that, that time has to be protected. So setting and that's another thing too, is that some people will say setting boundaries is selfish. Well, yes, it's selfish, but it's not selfish to the exclusion of others or to the harm of others. This time, this boundary is set so that you can maintain your mental health, your peace, right? So that again, setting boundaries, I think, is an essential part of self care that is selfish, but it's not selfish in a harmful way. Now, if you're setting boundaries like you think you try to act like you're Brad Pitt and you're not, because Brad Pitt has to set boundaries at a different level because he's Brad Pitt. And if he doesn't set these boundaries, people will just rumroll him. They'll just overwhelm him. And you can't maintain a modicum of mental health when you're being bombarded like that. You'll get sensory overload. But if you're trying to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you right now," you're basically pushing people away as if you're some kind of superstar when you're a clerk at the 7-Eleven. It's you know that's setting the wrong kinds of boundaries. So you want to set boundaries, but you want to set boundaries that are realistic, that are protective, and that are not harmful to others. Because like you could say, well, during this time, I just I don't want to talk to anybody. Let me say this. Let me give you an example. When I used to pray, I used to have my prayer time set, right? Back when I was pastoring. But anytime my kids needed something, they had a license to interrupt my prayer, because that was a boundary. I said, okay, this is prayer time. Unless the store is burning or unless something big is happening, please let me be. But there were times when it wasn't necessarily a store burning down incident. It's just that my kid needed an answer to something. They needed an issue resolved, or they just wanted to talk. And at that point, as a parent, I think that it was important for me to stop what I was doing and focus on them, right? Because they really don't understand. Kids don't understand boundaries like adults do, and you have to take that in mind. But adults understand boundaries, and if some adult is constantly interfering in your your workout time or your skin routine time or your prayer time, meditation time, things like that, well, that might be a problem, and you need to reset the boundaries for that. So, like you said, reteach people how to treat you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And let me say this about setting boundaries, because that can be an intimidating thing for people.
Yeah.
Especially if you have not been used to setting them. But again, here's where we say, okay, setting boundaries is selfish. But again, this is where it can really pay off, because you don't really know. Like I've seen, not a lot, but a few celebrities. I have some on my friends list, famous people. Mm-hmm. You have obviously some celebrity acquaintances and, relationships. And, but I would never presume, like, let's just say I saw Brad Pitt having dinner at McDonald's. He's not waiting in line to get his McDonald's.
Yeah.
I am not going to go up to him and say, hey, aren't you Brad Pitt? Can I get a picture with you? Because then I would have no sense of boundaries, meaning I would not respect someone else's space and someone else's boundaries. And I don't think you can really just intuitively know what other people's boundaries are, or know if you're encroaching on those, unless you've worked through your own and you know what your own boundaries are. So by working through your own boundaries, it's going to give you empathy and understanding for other people and make you better with their boundaries as well. So the more we talk this through, the more we think this through, and I know there's a downside, but when you try to put like I said at the beginning, a movie to it, it's hard to come up with the downside. But let me just give people boundaries work this way, or relationships work best this way. When I communicate what I will do, because I'm interested in being in control of myself, mm-hmm. I'm not trying to communicate what you will do and interested in controlling you.
Right.
So I'll give you an example. Best example I can come up with. I remember when I was making changes in my belief system, and I had to retrain people around me how to relate to this different version of myself, right? And I had always put up with this person that was in my life as a friend who was just constantly critical. Like nothing just ever measured up.
Mhm.
And I remember a particular instance, particular situation that really upset this person. And I can understand why it upset them because it made life less comfortable for them.
Mhm.
And so they were coming at me, well, you just, you're not accountable. You're not just thinking about yourself, the usual tropes.
Yeah.
But this person was always doing this. So I got two ways to look at this. I can control them or try to, or I can control myself or try to.
Yeah.
So one way I could have responded was, you're just always critical and I'm tired of it. And I'm not going to put up with you being critical anymore.
Yeah.
So you need to stop it. You need to stop being critical. You need to realize that you're critical. You need to realize nobody else wants to be around you. And you need to change so that we can have a relationship. That's one way to handle it. Instead of doing that, though, I said to them, I understand why you're upset. I'm at a stage in my life where I'm talking about myself, where I'm only going to spend my time with people who are edifying me and encouraging me and who believe in me and want the best for me.
Yeah.
I didn't say anything that other person was going to do. Right. I said, I'm going to spend my time with these kind of people. Right. And then imply, if you want to be one of those people, you're welcome to be in my life.
Yeah.
And so just asking yourself that question before you go into conflict or before you have to set a boundary or have a crucial conversation or whatever with somebody, just ask yourself, when I go into this conversation, when I talk to this person, is my goal to control them and their behavior? Or is my goal to control myself and my behavior? And then talk more about yourself, because boundaries are best communicated when you say, this is what I'm going to do.
Yep.
And people will respond to you better when you give them choices, very clear choices. If you want to be in my life, I'm only spending time with people who are going to be encouraging, people who are going to be edifying, people who are going to believe in me. Yep. And then they can say, well, then you just won't listen to other people and you just won't be accountable and et cetera and so on. Okay. Yeah. If the criticism, if it's coming from a negative place, I'm not spending my time with those people. Not going to do it. Now if they want to call that not being accountable, fine. Yeah. No problem to me.
And I've said this in that very same situation. I said, I'm going to be accountable, but I'm going to be accountable to people who are edifying to me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be accountable to someone who is full of criticism. And we've talked about this before. We actually did a show on this, the difference between criticism and a critique, right? And so, if you critique me and you say, okay, hey, this is something you might want to consider because this might help you do things better. I'm all ears when you say that. But when you say, that's really fucked up what you said, or this is fucked up what you're doing, and they couch it in a very negative way. Okay, well, I'm not really inclined to listen to you because your feedback is not giving me the encouragement or giving me some positive feedback how I can better approach similar situations. So again, that's part of self-care, because if you say, okay, I'm willing to accept a critique. I'm going, if you're going to tell me something that will help me, that will encourage me, that will edify me, that will provoke me to positive change, I'm all ears. But if you want to sit up and knock what I do and try to tear me down or knock me down a peg, I'm not really inclined to listen to you. I don't need to hear that. And when they say, well, you're not teachable, I'd be like, not by you. Not by you.
Mhm.
And so that's the only time when I change it, when I turn it around. I say, hey, I'm all about positive feedback. I'm all about being around positive people who are going to give me positive feedback, who are going to help me to grow and encourage me to to do greater things. But yeah, but when it comes to like negativity, yeah, oh, you're not teachable, you're not coachable, you don't like to listen. No, not to you, not by you, not.
You know,
Sorry.
I got to the point on social media there. I went through a really angry phase. Sometimes I see stuff that comes up on my like memories come up, and I cringe at myself. Um, but I went through this sort of phase where you and I both, to some degree, studied our way out of our doctrines, what we
Yep.
used to believe and preach and teach. We
Yep.
learned our way out of it, right?
Yep. Yep.
And people would just come at me with from my perspective, the dumbest comments. Like you could just tell they hadn't done the level of study. Like, um, well, you're just denying your own light, and you need to, you need to come back to Jesus. And I would get sarcastic with some people, and I'd be like, "Oh my God, you're right." I, wow, that comment you made just completely radically changed my view and opinion. Of course, I'm just being sarcastic and joking,
Yeah.
but I'm trying to make the point here. When does that ever really happen? Like that
It
seldom.
doesn't. That almost the occurrence of that asymptotically approaches zero.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
like almost never.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when people make comments to me, most of the stuff that has really changed my thinking or changed my life have been, I can think of a number of them, offhanded comments, not offhanded in the sense of rude, but just part of normal conversation where someone will make a remark from their perspective that I hadn't thought of before or something.
Yep.
And it will just totally shift my perspective. And they don't even know they did it in a conversation, but they weren't trying to correct me. They weren't trying to say I'm right and you're wrong. They just made a comment that, it, you know, caused me to look at something in a way I had never looked at it before. And I was able to see the wisdom in that for myself and say, oh, I want to adopt that way of thinking or that opinion or that belief or that viewpoint into the way I think about this now as well, right? But that
Yep.
stuff's never done intentionally or on purpose. So here's I'm making a larger point with this. So unless somebody asks you for advice or opinion, because who's to say that their opinion's better than yours anyway? Or who's to say that your opinion's better than my opinion? Because at the end of the day, and this is what I really had to realize, because I was a codependent on steroids, man. I mean, I really was just living life for everybody else. And I had to realize that at the end of the day, nobody else has to stand in my shoes except for me. Nobody else has to live with the consequences of my choices except for me. And at the end of the day, I have to fully live in the consequences of my choices. And so one of the things that I adopted a few years ago was I started thinking about my future self. If I make this decision, if I go this way, if I go this course, what am I handing off to future Aaron to have to deal with, right?
Yeah.
And nobody else, like, therefore, my opinion has to be the most important opinion in my life because
Yeah.
I'm the expert on myself and I'm the one that ultimately has to live with the consequences of my choices, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That also then behooves me to take counsel if I recognize wisdom in the counsel. So that can take two forms. I can hear something that can come from anywhere. Who cares what the source of it is?
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the things I had to crack up. I watched that Billy Carson. I didn't even know who Billy Carson was. I was seeing enough of it on Facebook and whatever that I went out and watched that. I don't know if anybody knows who Billy Carson is, but there was this debate with Billy Carson and this other Christian apologist, and so I went out and I watched that, And the entire nitpicking thing was over the sources, like who wrote what and what source was original and what wasn't. And like, who frickin' cares? Like, what difference does it make if it's common sense or wisdom, who the source is, right? It doesn't matter. Like, I don't need someone to tell me that racism is a bad idea.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need someone to tell me that slavery is a bad idea. So I can
Yeah.
read the Apostle Paul saying, you know, slaves submit to your masters as unto the Lord, whatever, and say, yeah, that ain't something that's for today. Like, regardless,
Right.
like you guys can all put your spin on whatever. Well, Paul really meant, or Paul was saying, or the culture that I don't care. It's bad advice for anyone living in the 21st century. Doesn't matter that it's in the Bible. The source doesn't matter, right?
Yep.
Or I could say, I recognize a person has experience in this area. I recognize they have expertise in this area. And I want to get their thoughts and opinion on this area in my life, in which case I will go and ask them. And then I might be considering the source. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So either the content of it is just, wow, that really sounds like something I want, or you're a person who's proven in this area to have wisdom and get good outcomes. And I want your perspective, but I still have to make my own decision. Otherwise, I'd be able to blame you. You know, let's just say I wanted some financial advice and I call you up, Derrick, and I say, hey, Derrick, you know, what do you think about, you know, this investment or cars? I'm going to buy this car. What do you think about this car?
Yeah.
And then you're going to tell me probably more than I ever wanted to know about that car, which is fine. I love it. But I know that about you. I know that you know cars, you keep up with that. And, you know, if you say, oh my God, Aaron, you definitely don't want to buy this because it's, you know, dangerous, or it's a junk heap, or they break down a lot, or they've had, you know, 9 recalls or whatever.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? But unless somebody actually actively seeks your opinion or your advice on what they're doing with their life, it's probably best to just not offer your opinion. And if other people are offering their opinions about you and your life, just realize future Aaron is going to have, or, you know, future you, future you is going to have to live with the consequences of those choices. And I decided I'd rather make my mistakes than somebody else's. And what I mean by that was, early on as a young man, there were so many things where I acquiesced to the elders, the pastor, the apostle, the whoever, my parents, whoever it was, right? And then if I go out and it turns to shit, I'm learning off their mistakes, not mistakes that they made where they can tell me, don't do that because I did that and this is what happened. But I'm just taking their advice and going out and making mistakes, when all the while inside of me, it's like, I really wish I would have taken this path. And I just learned to take full accountability for myself and say, I'm going to take this path. And if this path turns to shit, then I'm going to learn from it what I need to learn based on my perspective and my personal life and stuff like that. So there really is no reason to ever abdicate your own opinion. You can allow someone to influence or change your opinion, but it's still your opinion.
Right.
Even if they changed it, it's still your opinion. And so I really encourage people to, you know, make your mistakes, not somebody else's mistakes.
Yeah. And you know, it's funny. Like I've said this to my kids. I said, you know, live vicariously through me. You know, learn from my mistakes. And that I've went back and I've learned that that's not really a fair ask, because you know, you could say, well, I'll do this so that I don't make the same mistake. But who's to say that they're going to make a mistake, or that if they do something my way and it turns out sideways, then they're not learning the lesson that they need to learn. They're relearning my lesson, you know, and that's something you don't want to encourage anybody to do. So I agree with you on that. That was a lesson that I had to learn. But I want to say something too about in terms of selfishness, right? When does selfishness go sideways? You know, we've already talked about how selfish is not a bad thing, but when does selfishness go bad? And so one of the things that, and I'm not trying to inject politics into this, but I'm going to inject
Yeah,
politics into.
that's part of our lives.
And the whole thing is like with Donald Trump, a lot of his decisions are made to benefit him or people close to him at the expense of the average American. And so that is when selfishness goes bad. When you're in a position of authority, a position of power, and you use that to benefit yourself, knowing that it's going to harm others, then that's where selfishness goes off the rails. And so I think
Good
about this
point.
too, like if you think about sports, uh, like a basketball player, the game is on the line. A simple layup will tie the game. So if you work the ball and get and hit somebody down low so they could go up and get this simple layup, then you tie the game. You get to go to overtime and then you get to regroup, retrench. But then you got some Yahoo that he gets the ball, he goes out to the 3-point line, he shoots and clanks it.
Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
and that's one of those things where your decision was harmful to the rest of the team. It
Yeah.
might have been a good idea on paper. It might have felt good to you. Might have been feeling that hey, I got the hot hand. But then Smokey, come on, man. But you take that shot and you lose the game. And let's say that particular game has playoff implications. So now what you've done is you've caused the rest of your teammates to go home and sit out for the rest of the season. No bonuses, none of that. The season's over, game over. And that's so those are things like when you talk about selfishness, like if it's selfish, like just to benefit you. In other words, you say, okay, all the team is wearing Nike shoes, but I like these Adidas, right? So you go out and you wear these Adidas. Now it kind of breaks up the team appearance, but does it really harm anyone? No, it's just you wearing some shoes that no one else is wearing. So that's one of those things where selfishness isn't off the rails. It's kind of blatant or patent, but it's not harmful. And so that's what I wanted to talk about in closing is like where does selfishness, where do we draw the boundary between good selfishness and bad selfishness?
Yeah, you bring up some really good points. So I think we've been talking about selfishness within the context of self-care and maybe more like intimate relationships, family, and stuff like that. You bring up a really good point about when your decisions are involving other people. The CEOs who are being given raises, right?
Yeah.
At an astronomical rate compared to people that are working for the companies, or yes, pastors taking all the money for themselves rather than recognizing the labors of others.
Yeah. Diddy, that's another one. It's like here you are, you got thrown at your feet, and instead of using the power for good, you're trafficking, sex workers, and there, it's one thing like to be selfish and you say, okay, well, I've got this money, I'm gonna buy a mega yacht. Or not a mega yacht. Let's just say a regular yacht. I'm going to buy a yacht. Okay, so yeah, there are better things you could do with that money, sure. But this is something that it makes you feel good. You got the money, go ahead, do your thing. But it's like if you're doing, I'll give you an example of the whole yacht thing, right? Jeff Bezos had bought this yacht and it was being built in a Dutch shipyard, and it was so big that they were saying that this bridge had to be dismantled for the boat to leave the shipyard. And the people were just outraged. They were like, there's no fucking way you're gonna do this. So basically what they had to do is they had to kind of like let the boat take on some water so that it would drop lower below its water line, and then tugboat it out, right, and then finish the construction outside the shipyard, because the people were just like, there's no fucking way that you're gonna dismantle this bridge, because again, having a mega yacht. I mean, Jeff Bezos he has $200 billion. So what? Okay, he wants to buy $1 billion yacht. Okay, who am I to argue? It's his money. But it's like you do this and you say, okay, oh, by the way, what I'm going to do is I'm going to inconvenience a whole community by tearing this bridge down. And that's another shining example of that. Or you look at talking about pastors, like one of my favorite people to pick on is Mark Driscoll. It's like Mark Driscoll starts trolling somebody with a fake Twitter account, and he's making threatening comments to people, and when he's called on it, his elders call him on it. He basically tells them to go F themselves, and then what happens is the whole Mars Hill Church, that was like 20 years in the making, they had like 30,000 members over multiple campuses in the Seattle area, is now defunct. It's like Mars Hill was like one of the biggest churches in America, and it no longer exists.
Yeah.
And it's funny, Mark Driscoll came down to Phoenix, and now he's doing kind of the same stuff that he did up there. So again, this is where you're doing things selfishly, but this selfishness is now impacting the lives of others negatively. It's like where Mars Hill was this thriving community of Christians. Now it's a byword, it's a proverb, right? So those are examples. Or you look at this guy, the United Healthcare CEO that got murdered, right? And I'm not advocating killing anyone, but United Healthcare is a company that has done some really foul things to people concerning especially life-threatening or life-giving medications. And so how can you just do that without expecting some sort of consequence? You have to know that sooner or later you keep pushing a button. It's like if you keep poking somebody, if you just walk down the street and you keep poking them and they say, hey, listen, I want you to stop poking me, but you just keep on poking. When you get hit in the mouth, you have no one to blame but yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm running through my mind, like, great illustrations. I love the basketball illustration because that's something we can all relate to probably, right?
Yeah.
CEOs, Mark Driscoll, pastors, like, when you're in a position of power, then it's a different deal.
Yep.
When you have power over people to affect and impact them. Yeah, I'm more inclined to give pastors a pass on some things, not because I was one, but because you really have choice if you're going to that church. You don't have to. There's so many different churches and organizations and things like that.
Yep.
Not saying it's okay to victimize people. Don't get me wrong at all. And certainly those selfish choices have ramifications to other people, but it's totally different than your employer. A healthcare company. It's different than a healthcare company that's denying you life-saving situations.
I'm going to take a different approach on that too, because see, here's the thing, right? If you know how to exercise self-care for yourself, right, then you can make an informed decision. You say, oh, well, that's bullshit. I'm not going to tolerate that. I'm going to keep on moving. But for the people who don't know how to do self-care, it's easy for them to get abused. And so, I see your point, and I understand that you do have a choice. But for some of these people, it's like they are there because they don't understand self-care. In other words,
yeah.
Yep.
Sure.
So I will excuse me, I will agree with you to a point, but at some point, like pastors and people in leadership, who the people are who have good boundaries, who have good self-care, like I know when I was a pastor, I understood, and I know that you do too, because we've shared stories on this, but we know who has, who has a pretty robust self-image, that people who have good, good health care, or self-care, mental hygiene, right? But then there are some people that, they don't. And when you know that they don't, you have to kind of handle them with care. That's all I'm saying, is that,
Yeah,
I
no, that's good. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a really good point.
yeah.
Really good point.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just
No,
I'm just
no.
adding a little nuance to that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you. And that's no, really, really, really excellent point. Um, I'm just trying to think where to go next. I guess it's 1:40. So I mean, we've been on here for an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah,
I'm not seeing any comments
I'm
except
not
for
seeing any either.
I don't know what that's about.
Yeah, nobody
Some
loves us
people
today, man.
are making comments on different platforms. We're just not seeing it for some reason. Maybe it's
Oh,
the new thing. Maybe it's
maybe
the,
maybe this coming on Facebook and they're not showing up here, or
let me
um,
look.
the only comment I see is from Native Atheist, and
Yeah, me too.
they're on YouTube.
Oop, I can pull it up here on my phone, maybe.
Lil Z just said, "Thank you, gentlemen." She's on YouTube.
Okay, so we can see YouTube comments, but not Facebook comments. It would appear. I'm just gonna kind of, yeah, I'm not seeing all the comments here either. Part of this, I'm sure, is user error. Because it says 25 comments, but I don't think I can see all 25.
Yeah, you won't be able to see them until after
Um,
the broadcast.
yeah, I can see a few. Our buddy Jimmy says self-care isn't selfishness, but on an individual level, selfishness can be okay depending on the situation. Great comment.
Yeah, great comment.
Marianne says yoga can be helpful too. Yeah, and stretching. I never really got into stretching much, but as I'm getting older, I'm discovering there is probably real value in staying limber. So
It
I've
actually is.
incorporated stretching into my routine, which I've never done before, ever.
Well, I'm happy to say at 62, I can still touch the floor.
Yeah, well, I'm a work in progress. Let's see. Robert says everyone is different for sure. Not all medications work the same on people. Yes.
Yeah.
Medical practice is just that, practice. Use a reliable doctor. Trust your gut instinct. If you don't trust your doctor, get a second opinion. Yep. Good advice.
Good advice.
Not understanding the context of a couple of these, probably because they're responding to other comments I can't see. Marianne says years of boundary crossing causes trauma and is abuse. Yeah, and then just like some, hey there, how kind of comments is all I can see. So
yeah,
who knows? But for those of you that did watch and made it all the way to the end, whether you're watching live or by replay, you're the best. We appreciate you. I understand, in my opinion, time is a most precious commodity and resource that we have. And the fact that you give yours up to listen to these two fools go at it, talk to each other about stuff on Friday nights is amazing. And we appreciate you very, very much for that. Derrick, I don't know if you got any final thoughts or final comments, anything you want to say?
I don't have anything. All I can say is that for everyone watching, that self-care is different for everyone. Just like the one comment that medications act differently. Find self-care that works for you, whether it be physical self-care, mental self-care, emotional self-care, or spiritual self-care. Find what works for you, and then do that, and make it work for you. Also, importantly, make sure that you establish clear boundaries with the people around you, whether it be in intimate relationships, family relationships, friend relationships, community or work relationships. Make sure that you establish boundaries, and like Aaron said, you teach people how to treat you, and make sure you teach them right the first time so that you don't have to teach them again. And
Yep.
thank you for coming to our TED Talk.